Welcome to session 3, Identity Management Service, which is Keystone on OpenStack Wallaby. In this session, we will understand the Keystone, architecture of Keystone, the commands used in Keystone, configuration file, the location of the configuration file, main configuration settings for Keystone, and how it works, how to create users, how to create services, how to create roles, how to add users to the roles. You will understand everything from the command line and dashboard both. By the end of the session, you will be working with Keystone Identity Management Service. So agenda is architecture and main components of Keystone, managing Keystone catalog service and endpoints, managing creating projects, users and roles, managing and verifying operations of the identity service. That's the plan. That's the agenda. Architecture and components of Keystone. Every cloud provider has some kind of identity and access management service. AWS also have its own identity management service. Oracle Cloud I've been delivering, which has identity and management service. Every cloud provider, and the problem is they are not simple authentication service. Authentication is not limited to the username and password. It has to go beyond that level and has to have some kind of permissions or authorization of a specific service as well. So the Keystone or OpenStack Identity Service acts as a catalog of all OpenStack services, which essentially means it is not just a user ID password database, it's not just the user token database, but also who is allowed to do what, which actually means permissions, authentication, and authorization both. Everything is stored into Keystone. So it provides the ability for authenticating and managing user accounts and role information for cloud environment. It is similar to Active Directory of Microsoft Windows Server. It is the first component to be installed when starting an OpenStack cloud, which we are going to understand today, which you will be doing on your machine during the demonstration, which you will do, or the first lab assignment. Actually, if you follow lab assignment, first lab on the OpenStack after prerequisite is Keystone only. First we did networking and all, NTP server for time protocol. Then today we are also going to set up MySQL database or MariaDB database, RabbitMQ and message queue and memcache. After that, officially this is the first service which we configure. Keystone supports multiple forms of authentication, including login names, login name and password, token based credentials, and REST API logins. As I said, it is not just username and password, it has to be much more than that. Some important terms we used in OpenStack Keystone. One is service. Service is OpenStack cloud component listed in Keystone catalog. Examples of services are Nova, which is compute service, Neutron for networking service, Glance for image management, Keystone, and of course then we have Swift, Heat, Cinder. There are so many services providing some kind of cloud-based functionality which your customer needs from you, means as a service, whether it is image as a service, whether it is volume as a service, whether it is file as a service, whether it is compute as a service or the machine as a service, whatever is required. So that is actually a service. Service provides one or more endpoints through which user can access the service API. one or more endpoints? That depends actually. We need multiple endpoints, that is 100% true, because when you are talking about endpoints, where the customer will hit, where the user will hit, what is the URL and what port number? They can't be same. We can't have simply one URL because of security reasons. Internally, cloud components need to talk to each other, and that has to be secret, that has to be different from the default one where public is reaching out to the cloud. We call it as internal endpoint. Then we need some administration task, admin commands, admin connectivity, that's called admin endpoints. And the third is the public endpoint. So essentially we are going to have different endpoints for every service. So endpoint is the URL from which the service is available. Service can have three endpoints, as I said, internal, public, and administration. They can have three different subsets of API calls. Endpoint look like HTTP colon slash slash, the host name like controller, the port number, and the version of the API. At this URL, you would find that the service is listening to incoming calls on port number 5000 and the API version is 3, that is v3. Common port numbers for the services: port number 5000 for public API endpoint for Keystone, 8776 is the endpoint port number for Cinder block storage service, 9292 is for image service glance, 9191 is for glance registry, 8774 is for compute service Nova, 8080 6001 to 60003 it object storage service Swift. Interestingly, the Swift object storage is same, is used in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure also, OCI also. Then we have 9696 networking service Neutron. Then 8777 is telemetry service Ceilometer. Then we have 8004 is orchestration service Heat. Important terms are project. What is project in OpenStack Cloud? It represents the base unit of ownership in OpenStack. Networks, virtual machines, users, roles, and so on belong to a particular project. For administrative operations in OpenStack, an environment special administrative project called admin exists at the time of installation, and in fact this is the first project which is always created when you start Keystone or when you start creating your OpenStack Cloud. Domain, it represents a collection of projects, means it is broader in perspective. Collection of projects, group, and users that define administrative boundaries for managing OpenStack identity in entities. Then we have region. It separates the OpenStack environment with dedicated API endpoints, but with common Keystone services. Just like every cloud has different regions, so they have common API endpoint, but of course, with Keystone service remains common. Dedicated API endpoint might be there. As I work with OpenStack, Oracle Cloud also, for every region we have a different URL. Though identity service is common, we hit the URL for cloud, but after we are logged in, we go to our home region, and for every home region, there is a separate URL. Token. Token is not just the password, but it is more than that, because it also have the permission associated with what you are going to do, what you can do with the cloud. So token is issued by Keystone service, passed to API requests, and used by OpenStack to verify that the client is authorized to run the requested operation. Token is issued for a limited time and if necessary may be withdrawn prior to expiration. In order to get the user token, the user must either provide a name and password or the name and the key to access the API, that is API key. Token also contains a list of roles. That's what I was talking about. It is not just the user credential, username and password. It is much more than that. It has associated permissions. So it contains a list of roles that defines the roles available to the user. User is individual API consumer. User can be associated with roles, projects, or both. Role, specific set of operations associated with a user is called role. A role includes a set of rights and privileges in OpenStack. Keystone architecture. Keystone is the simplest service in the cloud. OpenStack Identity uses MariaDB or MySQL database. It is possible to store information in LDAP, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or Microsoft Active Directory. It uses the Apache Web Server as the front end for you to communicate, for the user to communicate. In modern documents, in some of the documents, the OpenStack community prefer to use the term project. In old document, you can still find that use the term tenant. The same term tenant is used in Oracle Cloud. In Oracle Cloud, we don't use the term project, we use the term tenant. Keep in mind the project and the tenant are synonyms. That's a good thing if you want to plan to go for Oracle Cloud. You will find the tenancy namespace. The tenant is referred to the same thing. Keystone main configuration file is located in etc keystone.conf. The minimum settings of this file for Ubuntu includes this log directory where the log will be stored, database, the connection to the database where you specify MySQL, PyMySQL, and the Keystone DB pass at controller database is Keystone. So this is the database Keystone located at this, and this is the password. So this is the complete connection details, and then extra headers distribution like operating system. We are using Ubuntu, so you will find distribution is Ubuntu. These are key components in the configuration file keystone.conf. Managing Keystone catalog service and endpoints. Before initiating something with OpenStack, you need to go through the authorization and authentication process. You can use the CLI commands options, but it is better and easier to create a file with global variable for the environment and to process this file with a source command like cat admin -openrc.sh or admin openrc, or give any name xyz.sh or not without sh also, because this file has got some environment variable which you will prefer to store in the file when you are making call to OpenStack CLI. So export operating system username, operating system password, project user domain name, project domain name, auth URL, identity API version, image API version. This is the bare minimum setting which you store in your system, in your admin OpenRC file, where you specify the password also. So this is generally kept in an environment variable file. You can create projects, users, and roles with OpenStack command. You need to use admin credentials for this operation. So source this admin file which will set the credentials for you. OpenStack project create description, and then whatever description you want, and then you specify the project name. Let's do some hands-on on our OpenStack. So I'm working on OpenStack. This is my home directory. If you see, I have a file with the name admin openrc. If you see this file admin openrc.sh, the same details which I was talking about, same detail I have in my file. So I'm using this file with these credentials. So I have to use source and the file name. So now I can check env followed by grep command and os. So that will show me all my environment variables I have. Now I can see what all services I have. I can see all what users I have. I can see all the projects I have. So OpenStack project list. If I try this object OpenStack project list, that will show me what all projects I have. So I have created this. Like if I want to delete this project, OpenStack project, it's quite simple, delete. For example, I want to delete this project. So this is a simple way I can delete the project. If I try that OpenStack project list, the project is gone. So if I have to create a new project, let me just adjust the size. If I have to create a new project, I will write OpenStack project add create hyphen description. In description is let's say first project for the class, and project name, let's say tsp underscore wala b, and today's date is let's say March. I'm just giving a name to identify. So this will create the project. If I want to see that detail, I can see the project list, and if I want to get the details of this project, I can use the command OpenStack project show and the project ID. If I use the show command, that will show me my project details. So this is how you create the project. Similarly, OpenStack service list, you will see all the services which have been configured on this system. You can see Neutron is configured, Cinder, Swift, Keystone, Glance, Nova, Placement, all these services are configured. So I'm going to delete this service, delete, and service name I want to delete is test. I can pass both. I can pass the ID also, that will also work. In last time command, I used the command name. If sometime what happens is we have the same name but different IDs, so it is better to pass the ID in that case. So if I try, you will see the service is gone. So if I want to create a service, I can create OpenStack service create, same process, OpenStack service create, and let's say test service with a description if you want, and the type of the service you want. So that's what you specify. Then if you want to say username, you can see the users also similarly, user list, that will show you all the users you have. I have admin users, the Skillpedia user, placement, Nova. So let me delete the user delete, and I will delete the user because these are I created the lectures. I update my content with the latest version. So my slides have the details about this project, this service, and this user. In the slides, you will see all these details. This is our dashboard. 10.0.0.11, that is my IP address of my machine, Horizon, and I type the username, and I will be logged in, and you see all the services available here. So under identity, you will see the projects. So I just created this project, so I can delete here, edit project, modify group, view uses, modify quotas, or delete project. I can delete the project. Similarly, I can see users also here. So I have a user admin placement. So if I want to create a user here, let's say create a user. So you specify create user. Domain is default. Username is test user. Description, test user. Email ID not mandatory. I specify the same password. Let's say test pass. Which project is going to be this user project? Let's say the Skillpedia project. And the role is going to be admin or member or I role. This is custom role I created. I'll show you the role also. So you want to make him admin, and you can make him admin. Let's see, the user is created now. I created test user just now. Let's see the roles. So my role is what I created. Let's see the role details, edit role, and then you can specify the name of the role. When you want to see the permissions associated with the role, or what role you want, you actually associate the role with the projects. So if you go to the projects, you will see the projects, the 3 service project, admin project, and this is the default project or bootstrap project for initializing the cloud. If you get inside this project, you can see modify groups, edit group, view uses, and modify quotas. The Skillpedia project, if I want to edit, let's say modify quotas, I can specify how many instances this project is allowed to create. Instances, virtual CPUs, RAM, I can configure anything. These are default values. From where these values are coming, they are coming from a file. I will tell you where these default values are and how we are going to change them. Of course, we have everything in our plan, in our training. So this is the project. Point is that we have these users and groups and all the details about the project. This is an identity use system from the dashboard. All right. Then we have admin panel. So that's we are going to talk about later. Our focus is the right now Keystone. So project we created, OpenStack project create description and the project name. Similarly, OpenStack project create description, and this is the command same. I executed it and I saw the details. To see the list of projects you created, you can see OpenStack project list, and we saw the list of projects. OpenStack project show with the project ID or the name. If they are unique in the name, you can use the ID or the name and you will get the details of the project. Create a user and add role. How you create a user? OpenStack user create hyphen password and the password and then username. Then you add a role to this user. OpenStack role add project TSP wala bhi, user is Sangwan, and what role you want to add. So this is the role you want to add. This is the project you want to associate and you want to add this user. So this is the role. So OpenStack role action project name username to get the association. So this is the association or coupling, and this is the role you want to assign. So this project, this user and this role. So this is complete coupling you want to do and you want to add this definition. So this way it will create this user. So this is user addition and this is the command for OpenStack role add. To see the list, if you are working as admin, you can see all the roles you have. OpenStack role list. The admin role is global, not per project. So granting a user the admin role in any project give the user administrative rights across the whole environment. If you want to get a list of all the roles in OpenStack Cloud, we can use OpenStack role list. All these outputs are from my same cloud. As you have seen, I created these roles and these users. To set up correct IP address and correct admin password for your environment, you can execute the same script, how to create a user in a domain. Let's understand how to create a user. So first source the same file, then OpenStack user create, domain is default and password and the username. So this way user test will be created in default domain. So OpenStack user create, domain default, password test pass and the username is test. Quite simple commands. You just need to practice. I have been trying these commands. I've been working on these commands for 4 years, 5 years now. So I'm quite comfortable with these commands. You just need to practice. OpenStack service. Two mandatory options: the name of the service and the type of the service. To check the existing service with their type, I demonstrated this just now, OpenStack service list, and you saw service is configured on my system. Add a domain, add admin role. How can we add role to user and create a service record? Admin role to the user test for the service. Let's create. Create a service record with the name test in Keystone for OpenStack test orchestration service. This is just a dummy name for you to understand, because whatever service we are going to configure, we are going to give it a name of our choice. So you can give any name. Let's create the project and the service and associated role. So first step, OpenStack role add, project is service, user is test and it is admin. So the user test has been granted the admin role. Now you are creating service. OpenStack service create, name is test, service name is test, description is test orchestration, and this is the service name. Sorry, this is name of the service. So OpenStack role add, you added the role and then you created the service. You will get the service description and enabled ID and the name. This is how you configure the services. The type is orchestration. So as I said, this is type is test orchestration here. Service name is test. Cinder service. Cinder is block volume. Block volume means LVM. It is created on the top of LVM. So you need to have physical disk create the partition, physical volume, and then you add abstraction layer on the top of that, and then you configure the Cinder block storage. So we are going to have a dedicated session on Cinder as well. Today's focus is very generic, that is Keystone Identity Service. So this is only restricted to identity. So when we are creating Cinder, there are two versions of the Cinder service. That is because not all other services support version 3 of the Cinder API. If you made a mistake in the server creation, you can delete it with OpenStack Service delete command. After creating a service record in the Keystone catalog, you need to create 3 endpoints for the service. OpenStack endpoint create, like region 1, and for the service name for this service, this type of service, public endpoint, and the URL and the port number and the API version. So this is how you create the endpoint. Of course, this is a general placeholder, also can be specified like tenancy OCID or tenancy ID. Generally, I'm sorry, I'll be using tenancy OCID because in Oracle it is a quite common term, and I'm delivering back-to-back training for Oracle Cloud as well. But tenancy ID actually. So OpenStack endpoint service create. Region is region 1, and the test orchestration type internal. So as I said, public, internal, and admin. I talked about 3 endpoints for every service you'll be creating. The common thing would be, first, let me talk about the fixed thing. So after creating many services, you will be able to memorize this. OpenStack endpoint create. This is common. And the region, because we are doing a local lab assignment, so this part will remain always remain fixed. Endpoint create region, endpoint create region, or endpoint create region. So everything is fixed every time for all the 3 commands. And this is going to be the name, whatever name of the service you are. Type, and then public, internal, 3 options: public, internal, admin, and then URL followed by the port number followed by the API version. This tenancy ID or tenant ID is optional, which actually coming will be filled from the project name, because a tenant ID refer to the project ID. So this can be ignored. So in my case also, you can run a check on all the endpoints. OpenStack endpoint list, OpenStack endpoint show. This will show a particular endpoint. So you see these endpoint IDs, a region, service name, service type, enabled, interface, and URL. For any endpoint, to see that, you can use OpenStack endpoint show and the ID. So if you refer to this, ID is taken from here. So this is glance image API endpoint. So field, enabled is true, ID, interface, region ID, service name is glance, service type is image service, and the URL of the service is this endpoint is this. So you'll get the details of these endpoints if you want. Horizon dashboard info and system information. Horizon can handle approximately 70% of the overall available OpenStack functionality. You can't create services and endpoints through the web client, although you can check a list of services and their current statuses. 70% does not mean everything, as I said. This is the location. I showed you this system information. Under system, you have default metadata and system information. There you will see all the endpoints and the identity service, which was saying this is the current version as of today based on Wallaby. These screenshots were refreshed today itself. Log into admin and go to admin system information. Let's look at this one. So here we go, system and system information. So we will see all the endpoints. Neutron, these are my internal public endpoints. Then Cinder volume 2, admin internal and public. Swift, admin internal public. Keystone, Cinder volume 3, glance, Nova, placement. There's some configuration issue, configuration bug. I can see that. There's two public endpoints. They can't be same. Internal endpoint is not configured properly, and that I can see that is the error. So compute services, these are compute services, then block storage services and network. This is system information you can get from here. Policy.json file for admin API. This file has been deprecated. It was there till a Rocky version. Steen also I have seen that, and Train also I could see, but now this file is deprecated. Policy.yml or policy.json exists in the service etc service name directory. In such files, if applicable, not always true, if applicable, policy definition for roles are described. For example, this is a part of etc placement policy. I have seen that. This is today's status on Wallaby. Admin API has been deprecated since W, that is placement. Placement API policies are introducing new default role with scope type capabilities. Old policies are deprecated and silently going to be ignored in the placement 6.0, which is in Xena release. That is which is new release, which is available now. Default rule for most placement APIs. So this is the example, and as I said, this is no more required. User project management in Horizon. It is possible to create users, delete users, edit users, and project in OpenStack in the web interface. I have just demonstrated how to create a user also. Create user. Similarly, you can create project also. Managing and verifying operations. For performance, OpenStack installation deploys Apache web server with mode WSGI, that is module WSGI package to handle request and memcached front-end to store the tokens. You can check whether memcached and Apache services are started and active with system command systemctl status memcached status Apache 2. So this will show you the current services are running and there's a current status as of today on my system, because as I said, I'm these screenshots and all the details are captured today. I always refresh it just in case something goes wrong. I fix that before I deliver the lecture. Types of access token. Keystone supports Fernet tokens. In the case of Fernet tokens, you don't need to run memcached daemon. The ps command can show you processes with the name containing the keystone, like with ps command pf aux grep keystone. Configuration files. You can find the configuration file in etc Apache 2 for this web server. And you can check this file in Apache 2 etc Apache 2 conf enabled and sites enabled. This is conf enabled configuration, and if you see carefully, your careful observation will take you to different files like JavaScript common. It is actually coming from conf available JavaScript common. Similarly, localized error pages, OpenStack dashboard, other vhost access logs, security, and server CGI bin configuration. Similarly, sites enabled. So this is Keystone configuration files available under sites enable keystone.conf. Troubleshooting tips. For troubleshooting, you may want to check the endpoints by the name or ID. First, you verify OpenStack endpoint list, and you just saw one error on my system for Neutron. There are two public and one internal, or I mean that there was something wrong. So endpoint were not correctly fixed. For any individual endpoint, you can see the details with OpenStack endpoint show and the identity or ID of that service. In case of debugging, you may want to check the logs, logins using your varlog httpd or varlog apache 2 or varlog keystone.log. There you will find the logins and errors and messages, everything in these two locations. Don't ever run away from the troubleshooting and from these error messages, because if you want to work as an administrator, you must start loving these logs. More you read, more knowledge you will gain, In fact, this is the first task I would want to give you, that do some research on the logs. Check all the logs, see the relationship, see the reference files from there coming. Start monitoring the logs. That's interesting thing. Check your learning. How do you add user Sangwan with a member of role the Skillpedia of the Skillpedia project? OpenStack add role project Skillpedia user Sangwan member, or how you are going to add it. OpenStack role add project Skillpedia user Sangwan. I'm going to leave it to you with a member role. That means this is ruled out, this is ruled out, this is ruled out. Only option left is this, because this is the role which you have to define right in the at the end. So similarly, which of the two system services should be started for a proper keystone functioning? One is memcached and httpd or Apache here. In our case for Ubuntu it is Apache 2. Apache 2. That is the service name. So memcache must be stored, started, and httpd. These are actually not services. How do you define new role in OpenStack Cloud? All applicable. Enter the command OpenStack role create role name. Restart Apache 2 service. Create new OpenRC file. Add definition in the policy file. This is no more required, and this is required. This is not required, and this is required. How do you separate two or more cloud instances but manage them with one Keystone instance? We have options, two or more cloud instances, but with one Keystone. We have features of domains or regions or availability zones, or each cloud instance should use own Keystone feature. No, this is not true. So we have the concept of regions here. Which Apache error code would you get if Keystone token has expired? 404, 3403, or 401? I will leave it to you. So these are the answers you can compare, and that's all for this session. Thank you very much.